Welcome to the bandsaw. And the bandsaw works a little bit differently compared to other machines. The dust collection system is also on the back, so you just want to make sure anytime you use it, right, that gate is open. So we'll leave it open for this demo. But the bandsaw works by using, obviously we have our table here. We have our guard that slides up and down with this adjustment right here, right? And then on the back, there are plenty of other adjustments that you won't have to worry about. This is all blade tension. So the only one you want to focus on is this one. And whenever you loosen it, you'll notice that the guard drops down to the table anyway, right? So we can lift this up, and it's hard to adjust this guard, but I'll do it, after I reset this. But the guard is relatively loose on this machine. It needs reassembled a little bit, but all in all, this is a decent bandsaw. Let me lift this up. And you can see the saw blade here, which is pretty large, right? And that's because it wraps around two giant wheels. One that's powered. Right here, you can see it's pretty dusty. All right, so we have our powered wheel, and then we have just a free-flowing, almost acting like a pulley wheel. And the blade wraps around both, so you can see the blades all the way over here, wraps around the big wheel, and then comes back down. These blade teeth are meant to cut straight down, so it pushes down into the table. And that motion allows you to hold things against the table and not worry about it being pulled upwards, right? So the bandsaw, it says straight cuts only on the front. That's an old, let me grab a marker here. That's an old sign. You don't have to follow that anymore. We got the blade tension correct. We use this machine for all kinds of cuts, straight cuts, curved cuts. You'll be able to cut all sorts of different things on this machine. So what I did was a rip right down the slot that was on there that we created with the router, right? And I just cut it off. You'll see that that cut is relatively wavy, and that's because that thin blade will move around a little bit, but you can always come back and sand it down, right? One thing you do want to make sure that you are doing while you are using this machine is if somebody is using it, make sure you are not bothering them. You need to make sure that you're paying attention to whatever you're doing on this machine. Also, if somebody's using this machine, you never want to stand in between. Well, I got a bunch of chairs over here from COVID related stuff, just moving and separating chairs, but you never want to stand to the right of the blade. The reason for that is this blade is spinning this direction, right, around that wheel. It's spinning in a clockwise direction from the front, right? And the only place for a broken blade to go outside of the machine is where this guard is not showing, right? So whenever we lift this guard back up to make a cut, the only place where it could eject, right, the blade, would be out from where that guard is not covering, right? Down at the bottom is our brake. You hit this, right? And it puts a brake on the lower drive wheel, and it'll stop the machine quicker. This one goes for a little bit longer if you don't hit that, but the brake on this machine isn't that great. It's not gonna save you minutes or anything like that, but it'll save you a few seconds, right? And it'll quickly stop it if you need to change the direction of your cut, right? So what I mean by that is, let me set up my phone again. What I mean by if you need to change the direction of your cut, we can use this machine to make curved cuts, right? Even if we needed to shape it into something like this. However, we have to use what are called relief cuts to help relieve the blade from whenever it is tracing around a line, right? If you are moving this material through and you're rotating this end of the board is acting like a lever against that blade. And if you are cutting too fast or you're not making relief cuts and giving that blade some chance to move in the correct direction, as you pull it this way, you're going to twist that blade. And as that blade's twisting and turning, you're increasing the chance of that blade breaking. So you have to make sure that you create what are called relief cuts. So relief cuts are whenever you cut up to your initial cutting line. We'll say that's our relief cuts. You can never have too many relief cuts. Whenever you cut up to your initial line, then you'll be able to, as you cut through it, have little pieces fall off so that it's not, pulling or acting as a lever because you're removing that piece. It's like you're restarting the cut each time. You don't want to back out of any cut while the machine is on if it is a long cut. So if you're ripping this down and then you're like, oh no, I messed up, and you pull this backwards, there's nothing preventing this besides this upper guard here from, there we go. There's nothing preventing you from pulling your blade, right, towards you, but there is something preventing you from pushing the blade. So if you pull the blade towards you, you're going to pull it off the track and it'll probably break and stuff like that. So you have to make sure that it is in the correct, motion before you turn the machine on. And if you mess up, turn the machine off, let it stop, then remove your material, right? Of course, safety glasses are always required. I recommend rolling up sleeves. And then if you have any rings, right, any hoodie strings, make sure they're short or tucked in, long hair tucked back. And on these short ones, I'm just gonna make the cut and then I'll back out. On these longer ones, I'm gonna stop the machine. Maybe on this one, I'll stop the machine and then I'll pull it out. And then I'll make my full cut this direction. All right? So I'm gonna adjust my guard so that it is about a 1/16 of an inch. So just barely above. So that's about an eighth. You could do like an eighth. And I'm going to tighten my guard adjustment back here and make sure it doesn't fall down. This guard's relatively heavy, so you have to make sure it's tight before you start cutting. Because if it starts moving and it falls down, you just want to make sure you can pull your material all the way through without it getting caught on the guard. All right. The less this blade's showing, the less likely you are, to mess up. You want to make sure that you are applying force on both sides of the blade. You're just pushing it through. You don't want to cut in the direction of your hand because you never know, you don't want to jerk towards the blade or anything like that. You just want to make sure that your hands are on opposite sides. You can also pull it in the back as long as you are careful, right? So make sure that nobody is standing to the right of the machine. When you're ready, you can start it up. I'm going to make my relief cuts first, then come back and make the others. So once your blade stops, then you can pull it out. On long cuts, you notice that whenever I pull that back, it's grabbing a little bit, right? I have to apply a little bit more force. So again, anytime you have longer cuts, you can see it from the back, you do want to make sure that you turn the machine off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut around that path on the outside of this blue line. So I'm going to leave my blue line there because then I could sand down to that final size that I need if I needed this piece, right? So I'm going to cut, I'll lose this piece. I'm going to continue my cut, I'll lose this piece, and then I'm free to make this longer cut without worrying about pulling that blade too much as I'm using it. All right, so start it up, place the board this way, two hands, away from the blade. Almost finished with my cut. Alright, and then this is the last one. I'm going to see if I can get this in one pass. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it in one pass. I'll have to come in and just notch it out. What I mean by notch it out is, I just have this little piece left, but now that it's that small, I should be able to get it. All right, and there it is. Our final piece. Now, you always want to cut to the outside of your line, so if I need to sand it down to this blue mark, I can do that by taking it over to our next machine, the sander.